It really is hillbilly basketball. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to 1141 Main Street here in Stevens Point. It's our Portage County headquarters here at Zaleski Sports. Jason Zaleski, alongside Dan Ross, as we have invited high school basketball, boys basketball coaches from all over the area to come and talk to us here on this show as their playoff seeds and perhaps their playoff futures were just made known to them about 2 to 3 hours ago, depending on where they were in the big show that happened earlier this afternoon. Got a whole list of coaches. Got 9 coaches we're going to talk to you about their playoff seeds. But before we go there, I'll open up to Dan for kind of opening comments on what you saw as the seeds came out. What maybe caught your eye a couple hours ago. Yeah,
I think that it went according to plan for what the math that we had. It looked like it's almost exactly what we projected. Some movement over the past week, but that's going to happen. I think that you brought it up in the show today. Hudson in Division I. We all thought that they would be the number 1 seed after Eau Claire Memorial lost to Spash yesterday. Not quite the case, and Hudson really got penalized for playing the Minnesota schools, and that's no fault to them, right? That's just a rule on how they do it. And I'm sure Hudson's probably sitting at home, and they're a little bit upset. We will talk to coach from Memorial.
That's right. Yep. Chad Brisky will be on the show later. Old Abe's head coach.
Yep. I'm sure he's happy today.
No doubt.
Yeah. But I'm excited to get going. It's I'll be honest, I didn't sleep real well last night because we have all this math and we work so hard to get this out to everybody, and we don't have the exact formula, and we have limited resources, and we do the best that we can, and it turned out to be really good. So it was positive. We did a good job on the girls. We did a good job on the boys as well, projecting.
Between me, you, and Mike, I estimate somewhere between 200 and 300 hours.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Just in the last couple months that we've spent on that math. And we like it because it's fun. I mean, the brackets, we could sit here and stare at them now for days and days, and we'll get to. Because the boys basketball playoffs will take place in 9 days. It'll be a week from this coming Tuesday, a week after the girls start, which is this coming Tuesday. But for this show, we did this last week with the girls, and now this week with the boys. Dan mentioned a couple of keywords, seeds, math, and brackets. So let's talk about that. It is a mathematical formula now that decides the seeds in boys basketball. This is the second year for it. This is actually the third year that the association has used a seeding process. The first year was football in 2020. That was more of a dry run for the folks that are down the street here. But a dry run that worked really well, worked well enough. They were able to show their results to the various coaching associations, get the stamps of approval, and on we go. The math that we know and that we know of, it takes into account really 2 things. There's 2 main things that move the needle on the seed math. The first thing is your own record. So what is your own winning percentage in the games that you played? And when those seeds were calculated late last night, how many games had you played? So Marathon Auburndale, when we get there, we'll talk about a 1-game discrepancy between those 2 that likely set the 1-2 in stone there because one team played 1 fewer game than the other.
Absolutely. It's the reason.
Yeah, it is. We'll get there in just a minute. I know Dan's excited to talk about that one. So your own win record, your own wins and your own losses based on the schedule that your coach or your athletic director or a combination thereof made for your boys basketball team. The other thing, and really the bulk of it, is then your strength of schedule. What were the records of the teams you played? And then the teams you beat, what were their records? And then it does go even a little bit further than that. Your defeated opponents' win percentage. And then, things get really muddy over there. But those 2 things, I think everybody can understand what we're talking about. Your own record, and then the record of the teams that you played against. And it's about, it's about a 40-60, maybe, 38-62 split, something like that between those 2 things. So does that make sense to everybody? You can comment in the chat box below if you have any questions about that. Dan brought up Eau Claire Memorial and Hudson. We'll talk to Coach Brisky about this when he calls, but Dan alluded to it. There are some exclusions to the formula, or some other just some rules, some subsections, if you will. Yep. When you play a team out of state, so if you're a bordered team, Superior or Hudson or Janesville or whatever it might be, Beloit, I forget which one was south of the other. I always forget those 2. When you play a team out of state, their record counts as 500. No matter what their actual record is in their own state, in the formula it counts as 500. And then if you beat them, you get credit for being a 500 team. So in Hudson's case, they're the 2 instead of the 1 because of the word Minnesota. They played 6 Minnesota teams. Eau Claire Memorial played 0 Minnesota teams. So while Hudson was playing and or beating some of those 6 Minnesota teams, they were giving credit for beating or playing 500 teams. And Eau Claire Memorial was getting credit for and or beating Oshkosh North, Sussex Hamilton, DC Everest, all teams with 15, 16, 18 wins. And so a large jump in the math because of that.
Yeah, and looking up Hudson's opponents on the Minnesota site, a lot of 17 wins, 18 wins, 14-win teams, but they're not getting credit for it.
And so coaches have this now decision to make, and the decision is this: do I care more about my seed, or do I care that I think playing this team, whether it's in Minnesota or not, whether that might hurt my playoff seed, but it's going to help my team? Will that be a difference maker? And the coaches will decide that. The other one that we alluded to was Marathon and Auburndale. Marathon the 1, Auburndale the 2, but Marathon has played one additional game after as the seeds came out last night than Auburndale, and they weren't even a hair width between the 2 numbers on those on that 1-2 line.
0.07%.
Wow, that's small.
0.07%. Yeah, that was the difference. That's the final difference that we had, and Auburndale led for weeks and weeks and weeks leading up to it. And when those that have checked the VIP's page on Zaleski Sports, we had Auburndale number 1 because they were number 1. Mm-hmm. Marathon got a huge win Friday night over Newman.
Yes.
Again, defeated opponent percentage, very high with Newman. And there was just enough scores over the last week where a lot of Marathon's opponents won games that it pushed them just barely over the top.
Without actually doing the math, but putting this into simple terms, if Auburndale had played that other game that they were, quote, missing comparing against Marathon, if that team had a 51% winning percentage, Auburndale probably the 1 seed.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And Auburndale plays 3 games this week. So it's not that Auburndale plays one less game. They played one less game before the seeds came out.
Yeah. Fortunately for them and for Memorial and Hudson, the 1-2 don't play each other till the sectional round, and that's a neutral site game. So in the end, probably didn't matter, but there were other cases that it did matter as they got into it. So we just wanted to kind of set the tone here and give this explanation that we gave last week. We'll give it again today, and it probably won't be the last time we give it. There's people running wild on Twitter right now, as there is every day.
Yeah, people are upset a little bit, right?
Yeah, but I
will say, though, okay, I will say, I have been in coaches' meetings, and this is so much better. It honestly is, and I know that coaches probably don't feel that way because you can fight for your own team in those meetings, but it really is used car salesman meetings, right? Where you sit down with 15 other coaches, and there's 3 or 4 that are voting on win-loss record. That's it, because they haven't looked at it. Yeah. You have conferences teaming up on teams outside their conference. Mm-hmm. You have literally deals made as you're walking in, like, hey, I'll vote you 3, but I want you to vote us 7 because we want the 6 because we get an easier path,
hold
right?
on here. Hold on.
Yeah.
You're saying in that coaches' seed meeting, some of those coaches would sandbag to get a lower seed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and that's why we can't have that process anymore, right? We can't have inattentive coaches. We can't have lethargic coaches. We can't have apathetic coaches. We can't have conspiring coaches.
Yeah,
we can't have any of that. But they were all there.
They're all there.
Yeah. So the WIAA rightfully moved to the system. There would be advancements made in the system. Again, this is the second time it's been used for boys basketball, the third calendar year that it's been used. There's no doubt that changes will get made. The changes, though, and keeping this in mind, are changes come from recommendations from the Coaches Association. So the WIAA isn't just single-handedly going in there and creating a rule book on these things. They are taking recommendations, if not full-on proposals from the Coaches Association, and then saying, okay, coaches, that's what you want, so here it is.
Yeah, and they made changes this year. For example, they solidified the 500 outside the state. Mm-hmm. They also made, I think, a much-needed change for first-round games that if there's an 8-9 or 16-7 who are playing each other, whoever won the head-to-head gets to host. I think it's a great rule.
Yep, and we have what we think is an example of that.
Two of them.
Oh, two, okay. So I know of one, and we're going to talk to Assumption Royals head coach Josh Pitz later on in the show, Assumption and Wild Rose. We believe that Assumption had the better seed math, but because they resided 8-9 next to each other and Wild Rose beat Assumption a few weeks ago, Wild Rose will host as the 9 seed, even though they're listed as the 8 seed. What was the other one?
The other one was the Spencer Rockets in Division 4.
Right. Yeah, right. Tell this one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So we had them as 10, almost 9, right? It was pretty close. So they got put up to the 9 spot, but they swept the 8 team, which is, I think, Westfield.
It is Westfield.
Yep.
Yeah, they beat them once, and they played once.
Yep. So they went from a 10. We went to bed last night thinking they were a 10, and they are an 8 today because of the 8-9 flop.
That's what Rockets do. They blast off into the atmosphere. They're climbing the charts. They haven't even played a game yet. All right, time check. We've got our first coach coming up in less than 5 minutes. That's Stratford's head coach, Kurt Schmidt. We take a look at Stratford. I had him here. You've got him over there.
I got him over here.
Yeah, go ahead. Stratford plays who to begin?
Stratford. We should probably know this, right?
Yeah, Abbotsford is who it is.
Abbotsford.
So Abbotsford's had a tough run. I think they've got 2 wins on the season. So a bit of a tough deal there for the Abbey Falcons, but still, everybody's in the playoffs and go out there and win. That's the other thing too I want to mention about the seed process. After it's and now it is said and done, now the mission is just go out there and win. Prove it for yourself, prove it for your town, your school, your whatever. And that happens all the time. You think of the NCAA tournament, and a team is miffed because they were seeded here, and they go out and win the whole darn thing.
Yeah.
So go out and win it. That's the best way to.
North Carolina made a huge run last year. They were 8 or 9 or something. I don't remember what they were, but made all the way to the finals or the Final Four or something.
University Maryland, whatever county, the Labradors, right? They beat Virginia.
Yeah, Baltimore County.
Baltimore County. There you go.
Yeah.
University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the Labradors. The first and the only 16 seed to ever win in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So they were misseeded, you would say.
Something. They almost won the second round, too. That's crazy. And last year, 15 St. Peter's went all the way to the Elite 8, I think.
So it happens all the time is the point, and the resolve that you have is you get to cheer on your team and implore them and cheer them on to make up for what you perceive as a lack of seeding or a poor seeding process. Yeah,
the coach lingo here is everyone's 0-0 again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, they kind of are.
Yeah.
Especially when it all hits next week on Tuesday. Again, that's the start of the WIAA boys basketball tournament. Girls action starts in just 2 days for a live broadcast schedule. Go to ZaleskiSports.com, click weekly schedule. And Trevor, is that up yet for this week? Work in progress? Work in progress. Okay, be up by tomorrow at noon? Yeah, okay. By the way, Trevor Zaleski, Mike Wendland also helping us out with the broadcast today, sitting on the production end. Yeah, so anyway, click. All you got to do is click weekly schedule, and you find out all the girls' playoff games will be broadcast live this week on Zaleski Sports. And then the same thing next week is I think we've got Mike working on warming up Stratford Tigers head coach Kurt Schmidt. So we'll get the word from Mike here in just a minute, and we'll talk to Coach about his number 4 seed coming up in the playoffs, and always an exciting time for coaches and of course for us in the media. And so Dan, what you're going to hear today,
I like it better in the media actually.
Way better, right? And what you're going to hear a lot today is us projecting, and we're going to talk about Stratford could play Marathon in a regional final, and a coach wants nothing to do with that talk.
Right.
But we do, as we bring now Stratford Tigers head coach Kurt Schmidt onto the broadcast. Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you got Jason and Dan here. You are the number 4 seed when playoffs kick off here on Tuesday, February 28th. So you got about a week and a half. Give us your initial reaction on a season's worth of work and the 4 seed in the playoffs.
Well, kids are battling pretty hard. We started out slow, and then we ended up winning, I think, 7 of our last 10 games, and then we took a little hit on Friday night to a Edgar team that played really well, so hats off to them. And obviously we've lost one of our better scorers, so we've had to kind of recalibrate and try to recover. And I think the kids have been working hard, battling hard, and I would say the 4th seed was what we kind of expected. we're looking at all the teams, and so we're okay with that. We're okay how it ended up. So now we just kind of finish off the season and get ready to go for the playoffs.
Got the Abbotsford Falcons coming to town when playoffs begin in 2 Tuesdays from now. When do you begin the process of learning about the Abbotsford Falcons?
Well, I mean, we've played them already, so we're quite familiar with them. And of course, as you scout, you watch some games that they're playing, opponents that you're going to play, and so we're very familiar with them. Now, if you were to get through that game, now you got to get some work done with the next two, which I believe is Necedah or Iola.
Yep,
that's right.
Would be the next one. So you gotta you always take one game at a time, but obviously there's not a lot of turnaround, so you have to kind of start putting actions, into your making sure you've covered everything. If they do something a little more unique, something you haven't seen before out of those three teams.
Coach,
and
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's about it. Is you focus on that Tuesday game, and then but you've been drilling some stuff so that you're ready for either of the other two.
Yeah, and not only would you have a Tuesday game, but if you're able to get past Abbotsford, then you go Friday, Saturday. So you kind of brought it up, getting ready on a short notice. And if chalk were to hold, that would be a game against Marathon, who beat you earlier this season 60-35 and then 62-51 just a couple weeks ago. What's a good strategy? What's a technique, not only for you, but for the boys to go to bed Friday night and get back up and ready on Saturday?
Well, you generally have a little walkthrough Saturday morning. But once again, we're familiar. So it isn't one of those things where, okay, now we need 2 days again to prepare for Marathon. You're familiar with them. You've done stuff against them. You're not creating brand new things at this point. So it's kind of walk through stuff. And that's the part of when you're a team that, gets beat twice, you can try some other things. And then and I think, I talked to a media person about this earlier, when you beat somebody twice, there's that little, part where, hey, what we did worked, so let's keep doing that. But you never know what they're coming back with, because the other things weren't working. So then the other opponent kind of tries to come up with a different plan. So there's that kind of cat and mouse feature to things, just like last year when we played them. They barely got us twice during regular season, and then we were able to beat them for the regional championship game last year. It was the third time. So I'm not saying that would happen per se, but we're going to give it all we got, and they're having a fine season. Hats off to them.
Talking to Stratford Tigers boys head coach Kurt Schmidt. I've got Dan Ross next to me. He's got our final question here today.
Yeah, we had Edgar borderline 5-6. How happy are you that Edgar got pushed to 6 and you won't see them second round?
Well, I don't. That wasn't. It didn't cross my mind really. They're gonna battle and compete. I mean, but bottom line, I don't worry about I'm glad we got this one, and I'm glad we don't play them. I don't worry about that too much, because in the end, you just gotta take care of business. So all I know is they're gonna give some people some fits early on. So and then you got a WIAA on that side too. That's a nice ball club in Auburndale, and so that's going to be a battle there.
Yeah, I think that half is really wide open. WIAA obviously creates mismatches. I mean, they have a 7-footer on their team, right? That's kind of a rare thing.
Yep. And I believe Auburndale played them earlier in the year, and I think it was a 4-point game. So
yeah, it was
clearly
a good game.
Yep, they're clearly competitive, so it should be a good half bracket also.
All right, Stratford Tigers head coach Kurt Schmidt, thanks for joining us today. Best of luck in your games left this week and into the playoffs next week.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, so we heard from Stratford Tigers head coach Kurt Schmidt. You brought up WIAA. I'm glad that you did. We don't have a chance to talk to Coach Weinfurter from Auburndale, but yeah, you got to see Marquette. I forget his first name, but Ethan Marquette.
Yeah,
Boy,
Ethan.
how do I even remember these things? You got Ethan Marquette, 7-footer out of WIAA. What were your impressions of WIAA when you saw them over in Auburndale during Christmas?
They played really well in that tournament. They beat Neillsville handily in the first round. I think Neillsville's a little bit better now than they were back in December. Neillsville's playing really well. We saw them at Colby or against Colby, right? A couple last week, I think it was. WIAA, again, they have a 7-footer, but it's not the traditional 7-footer. It's more like the new age basketball 7-footer where he can pull up from 12 feet and shoot threes, and really good at it. So there's nobody in this bracket that's going to be able to guard a 7-foot shooter. Like, there's no way to do it. So, yeah, there's a lot of issues when you see WIAA on your side of the bracket. And Edgar has a potential second-round game with them. Edgar might make a lot of noise in that half of the bracket.
Yeah, Edgar has, what maybe they lack in, maybe a pure 3-point shooter or some absolute height. They make up for it all with toughness. Do the Edgar Wildcats?
Yeah, they're football players.
they do play basketball over there. They do. And Edgar, the 6 seed, Marathon, Auburndale. You would suspect, chalk to hold at least on the top and the bottom. Stratford's going to give Marathon a game. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
2 good coaches going at it there, but. You think of Coach Jacobson apologized to me on Friday night. He wasn't able to call in today. He said he sure would have liked to. But you got the Marathon, who's beat Auburndale twice already in the year. Auburndale is going to have something different. But what can you come up with? In just a couple weeks' time, they just got beat by Marathon the second time just a couple weeks ago. What new can you come up with?
Well, they're going to have game film of 4 or 5 games since then, and we saw Newman be able to handle Warren in the second half, right? There's probably something to that.
2-3 zone.
That was a 2-3, yeah.
Is what we saw, and it did seem to have an impact. All right, let's see. Division 2, we'll take a look. We've got Coach Matt Lindsay coming up from Mosney. At least he's next up on the docket to talk to.
Love it.
As again, we've got 9 coaches we're talking to today, all from around the area. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna sneak that list here in just a minute, and I got to remind myself of all 9. I don't know who they are. Mosney comes in as the 3 seed. They get a bye, but they'll play familiar opponents, Anago or Merrill, in the Tuesday semifinal, right? Quarterfinal. Yeah, that's a quarterfinal. Yep. So Anago Merrill in the quarterfinal. Mosney has beat both of those 2 teams already this year. They beat Anago twice. They beat Merrill once. So either way, when Mosney takes the floor at home on Friday, they're going to take on either Anago or Merrill. And I'm told that we've got Coach Matt Lindsay on the line. Yes? Yep. Okay, we'll bring in Mosney Indians head coach Matt Lindsay. Coach, the 3 seed, and when you guys hit the floor in 2 Fridays, you're going to play a familiar opponent, either Anago or Merrill. Talk about your draw as a 3 seed.
Yeah, pretty excited with our 3 seed. Taking a look at our bracket this year, definitely where we were at record-wise and, playing the teams that we played this year. Pretty excited with our 3 seed and really liking the Anago Merrill draw. Opponents that we know we've played this year that definitely never quit. They're both fighters all the way to the end and continue to bring their best stuff no matter who their opponent is.
Coach, I just remember to last year's playoffs, probably didn't go as you had planned. Why is the team different this year? What did you and the guys learn about the playoffs last year to compete better this year?
We talk about every game, whether it's a win or a loss, there's things to learn from it. Definitely for us is, we don't try to look ahead. We don't try to think that, we're going to be here or there, which is part of the reason of why, this year we added some newer teams to our schedule, definitely beefed it up that way to make sure that we're ready and that when we're going against stiff competition, we know how to handle some adversity and just play through it.
Yeah, Coach, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I wanted to talk to you about your non-conference, but let's spin it just a little bit different way. Now that we're all finding out that that the non-conference really is important, more important maybe than some had realized in that seeding process. How do you value the non-conference schedule?
I value it a lot. There's definitely ways for us to be battle tested and prepared to go into this push here in the postseason, which is where if you look at the end of our schedule here this year, you look at Pines, Eau Claire Memorial, Medford, Brilliant, Lakeland is how we're ending our season this year. Also with some DC Everson there, that's our month of February, and Rylander. It wasn't an easy month for us. Definitely, we've learned a lot of things about ourselves and areas that we definitely needed to clean up as we head into the postseason.
You got a week of games coming up this week. I don't have your schedule here in front of me, but tell us what about now this last week of games, because they still matter, but it won't affect postseason time. What's left to work on, and how do you make these games matter this week?
Yeah, well, tomorrow night we go against Brilliant, undefeated team in Division III. So definitely a lot on the line there for us to kind of right the ship here. We've lost the last three, so we're really trying to push with Brilliant. And then we on Thursday we have Lakeland at Lakeland, which they're another team that just always competes. Coach Fortier really gets them motivated and playing hard, and they just get after things. So for us, we really looked at it as how can we play some tougher non-conference competition and really just keep our schedule as tough as possible, and be ready once this postseason comes this year to be, battle tested and ready to just continue to play hard against whoever is put in front of us.
Talking to Mosinee Indians boys basketball coach Matt Lindsay. Matt, I've got next to me Lakeland alum, so he's not going to take it easy on you here with the next question.
Yeah. Hey, Coach. Dan Ross here. So I'm a Lakeland boy, and growing up and playing ball underneath Ted Voigt up there, I always thought that this D2 sectional, we always thought it was a bit unfair because it's a third of the state, or like half the state, right? Because you have all the Southwest teams, you have the local teams, now even goes over towards the Appleton area. What are your thoughts on having such a big region of having to scout and recruit and have to worry about teams that are almost impossible to schedule, right? Obviously, Fox Valley Lutheran isn't on the schedule. The Onalaskas and the lacrosse schools, it's just a little bit too far to travel. What are your thoughts about just the geographic area?
For us, I think you're asking the wrong person for this, because my closest conference game is an hour drive.
Right.
So for me, I got no problem with us getting on a bus and going to drive to play great competition. That's the key for us right now, is we want to play great competition and we're willing to travel for it. So when Kakana reached out this year and asked us to be on their schedule for this coming school year, I was all for it. When Brilliant did the same thing, I was like, let's do it. And we managed to pick up an Eau Claire Memorial this year, as was one game away from state last year. So I'm willing to play tougher competition to make sure our guys are ready to play and understand that, they have an extremely high upside when they're playing together as a team, and that we can compete and we can battle any team around that is willing to, put us on their schedule.
All right, Coach Jason here. We'll begin to wrap things up with this question. You've got Shawano in your, what we'll call a pod. They're waiting for the winner of Wausau East and Wapaka. How do you go about not only, planning for your game against either Anago or Merrill, but on that same night, trying to figure out the Shawano Hawks?
Yeah, that's always the tough thing when you're coming off of, one night of trying to be prepared for who you're going to play next. But the big thing is, we have some similar opponents. They played Lakeland, Rylander, Anago, New London, and DC Everest. So, we have some similar opponents, so we're pretty similar team-wise that way. We've competed with all of those and, got some pretty good desired outcomes against those teams. So in that sense, we're fairly similar, which also means I definitely have some film on them already. That is, been taken and broken down already. So, there's things like that where you don't ever want to look ahead, but as the coach, you got to be prepared and ready for who could be next, especially coming into the playoffs. So right now I'm preparing for 5 different teams to get through next week.
Mosinee Indians boys basketball coach Matt Lindsay, good luck this week and into the playoffs next week.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, Dan, that's. I thought you asked a really good question there. We thought about that too, and you can even throw in Colby in Division III. Yeah. When you're talking about these teams that are from this area, and Division II is the better example because that to find a matchup in your section outside of your conference, you are going to have to drive a couple hours somewhere.
Yeah, we have. Just in this half, we have Ashland, we have Shawano, which is not close to Merrill. New London is not close to Merrill. Fox Valley Lutheran, obviously not close to Merrill. Mm-hmm. And those are regional games.
Yeah, Mosinee.
Yeah.
We heard you. We understood you.
Yeah, Mosinee or Merrill or whatever.
Oh, well, either. Right.
Yeah. Right. And those are regional games. And Medford would have done really well in this regional, and the WIAA took them away. They sent Medford Southwest, which is... Talk about some long games, right? Medford is going to get New Richmond or Menominee. Like, that's a 2 or 3 hour trip.
Right.
One way or the other for the winner of that game.
And then potentially Rice Lake or River Falls have to travel to Medford. That's a long way.
Yeah, the good news is that Medford gets to stay home until sectionals, but there's some really, really good teams on the half of the bracket. Really good teams. Yeah,
and that's a good point on this one, too, because on the girls' side, Mosinee and Medford are together. Yep. Here in the boys, They are not. Now, there's more teams in the boys, so the geography gets a little bit. It's different on the boys' side for sure. Interesting comments there from Coach Lindsay. We appreciate his time here today. A note I had from earlier that I don't remember if I said it on the other show or not. I have no idea what I said a couple hours ago, but I wrote it down here. I think it bears repeating though because it goes in the line of. We're so late in the season. What can you do now to make things differently? Time is now. Like we're there, but yet in the 15 wins Mosinee had, only 3 came against teams with a winning record all season long. And now Medford and Pines and those count. Those are some of those 12 losses, but still, Shawano is going to have a winning record if that game appears in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Great Northern Conference, for one reason or another, not a great conference. Right, Medford and Pines and Mosinee are very good. After that, there's kind of a big gap when you get down to Lakeland and Rhinelander and Anago. It's all cyclical, right? Sometimes the conferences are really good, sometimes they're less good. I think that as media, right, I would love to see Merrill beat Anago. I mean, nothing against Anago, but I want last year's rematch. I want Mosinee playing Merrill. Merrill knocked out a really, really good Mosinee team last year.
And you think that was in a regional final, right? Yeah.
I think it was.
Or something.
I think it was the same round. If I'm not.
Yeah. Too early for Mosinee's liking.
Yeah, I think 2-7 game maybe.
Yeah, too early for their liking, no doubt about that. But on the other hand, I should say the 15 wins, only against teams that were 500. Some of those in conference, you can't help that.
Yep.
But Coach also said that he did try to schedule up. So those teams are going to be tougher to beat and contribute to that. But it's a wide discrepancy there. 15 wins, but only 3 above teams that are 500. That's something you got to work on somehow in the next week and a half.
Yeah, and obviously I'm not an AD. I'm not doing the scheduling, right? Yeah. And it's hard to schedule future schedule based off of current teams, right? Because some schools are all seniors, and next year, like Iola, for example, fantastic team the last year or two. This year, they don't have a whole lot left in the cupboard, right? It's going to take some time to build the team back up, and some of these D4 schools scheduled Iola, and it really hurt them strength of schedule this year.
Yeah, because I think the T-Birds ended with 3 wins, or at least something like that. 2? Okay, yeah. Mike says 2. Mike would know. He's a couple blocks from the school. But yeah, and to your point, that was a team that may, if the season was allowed to continue a couple of years ago, they were winning state that year. And maybe, who knows? We'll never know now. The sectional final game never happened.
Stratford was really good, though.
Stratford was really good. We were all looking forward to that game. Man, oh man, we were looking forward to that game. Okay, let's move on. Who's next, Mike? Okay, perfect. We're going to move to Division I basketball now, and we're going to talk about a bracket that probably a whole lot of people around the state are talking about right now, where Hudson, the 2, and Eau Claire Memorial, the 1. There's others in there, but I hear Mike talking to Coach now, so we won't get in. We'll save that talk for after, but certainly this is the talk of the state right now.
Mark Miller has eyes on this. We love Mark Miller, friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most knowledgeable person about Wisconsin boys basketball.
Yeah, the names, the numbers, the ins, the
everything.
outs. Mm-hmm.
Learn so much whenever you talk to him.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and bring on Eau Claire Memorial Old Abe's and the number 1 seeded Old Abe's. Coach, I told you, it's Chad Brisky. Coach, thoughts on being the 1 seed headed into next week's tournament?
Yeah, it's a credit to our kids. Graduating 4 guys that contributed so much last year, having as much success as we had this year. It's a credit to our kids, our seniors in particular, that came in and put in a ton of time this summer. And we always play a challenging schedule. That's something we've always done. And, I think one of the big things that you take away from tonight is by playing a challenging schedule, you put yourself in position to get a high seed. And so we feel fortunate enough to win enough games to give ourselves this position. And the rankings mean a little bit tonight, but then after tonight, the numbers kind of fade away, and you have to start prepping for all those tough teams you're going to face.
Yeah, not only did the Zaleski Sports supercomputer like your math, the association's supercomputer liked your math. You're 18-5 overall. I talked about it a little bit on the 3 o'clock show today, and I'm sure you and I will talk about this maybe after the season's done. But Hudson is the 2. Hudson probably not very happy right now, but the way the math worked out, you talked about it. You play Oshkosh North, you play Sussex Hamilton, you play DC Everest and others. You even throw in Spash from last night, and then some of your conference opponents, even Hudson. All that helped your math. So tell us about your non-conference scheduling and how you go about that. How are you able to kind of help project who to put on that schedule in the coming years?
Well, absolutely. If you look at our schedule, especially our non-conference schedule with like even across Central, you see a lot of traditional powerhouses in the D1, D2 avenue. So I think that's where you always try to start. And the Fox Valley, it's always tough to get games against them. They have such a big conference. They're pretty locked into a small non-conference slate. So we're always looking for ways that we can get in. So Oshkosh North had a tournament that we could be involved in, and we said, yeah, you for sure. As long as we get to play you, we're coming over. And we're just looking for ways to do that. I called up Coach Cerrone, who's just one of the great ambassadors of the game in the state of Wisconsin. And he was looking for a little Christmas getaway up in Eau Claire. And we had enough to offer him that they made the trip up. And so that was a huge game for us to land. And it's just from, working the phones and trying to stay up on your scouting reports a year or 2 in advance and knowing which teams are going to be good and trying to get them on the schedule. And it worked out this year where we faced a lot of good teams and we were fortunate enough to win a few of those games. And, we think with that, we feel pretty prepared going into the playoffs.
Talking to Coach Chad Brisky of the number 1 seeded Eau Claire Memorial Old Abe's. Let's talk about your team a little bit. I've got to see your team play up close and in person a couple of times. We're able to do our All Access weekly show. By the way, All Access Eau Claire Memorial comes out tomorrow at 6. But, it looks to me, Coach, you've got maybe more of a traditional setup. It looks like you've got a point guard, you've got a 1, you've got a 2, you've got a 3, you've got a 4, and you've got a big guy, you got a 5. A lot of teams that are playing, the 4 out, 5 out, and all that kind of stuff. But it looks like from a distance, you've got maybe more traditional 1 through 5 setup. Tell us about your team.
Yeah, this year's team, we think we have pretty good length. Like you said, we have a big guy. He's been on varsity now for 3 years, a 6'8" kid in the middle. That's Connor Welsh, a big, strong kid. And he presents some unique matchups and some unique ways that we have to get him the ball within our ball screen concept that we run. And at the same time, we have some pretty good guards across the board. We generally don't, outside of our 5 position, which we call our power player, the other 4 guys we kind of consider interchangeable, although certainly you'll see the ball in the hands of Cooper Jesperson, our point guard, a lot more. But they're pretty interchangeable within our offense, and we try to pick up matchups based on who the opponent is guarding that night with some of their best players. And we've got a team that shoots it pretty well from the perimeter, and that always helps to create space. So when you're able to get space, that leads to some more post-up opportunities. It kind of goes hand in hand. So we think we got a pretty dynamic team, and we do kind of think that we're able to match up against a lot of different teams because of our diversity in terms of size and skill. So that's something that has allowed us to play a lot of different team stylistically too. That's helped us kind of get to where we are here at the end of the season.
Being the number one seed, you do get the opening bye. You'll play the winner of Wisconsin Rapids or Oshkosh West. That game all the way over in Oshkosh. How do you go about getting ready for a game like that?
Well, I think it comes from prepping starting right now. We have film on both. We've been gathering film on all the teams in our bracket throughout the course, and now we can start to really kind of focus in on those teams. And I've got a great assistant coaching staff that puts in a ton of time, so we kind of divvy up the workload that way. And we'll certainly watch that game, but a lot of our scouting report will be generated off of more of the games that we have throughout the course of the season. So we have a bigger look at what they're doing. And that game will be played on a Tuesday, so it's a little bit of a tight turnaround to wait for that particular game. We know Oshkosh West has a really good big man that's played pretty well in the FBA, and they've got some. The FBA is an outstanding conference, so just by playing in that league, you put yourself in a great position. And they've got a couple wins against some of the better teams in that league, so there's certainly no slouch. In Wisconsin Rapids, they can kind of match them with the Youngworth kid, and we played them last year, so some of those players are still on the scouting report from last year. So we'll kind of dig that up and kind of look at it and see if there's some tendencies that we can break down of those two teams as we start to prep.
If chalk were to hold, you would match up in a game to go to state against Hudson, a team that got you twice during the season. They are your conference champions. Whether it's Hudson or if it's somebody else that's beat you twice in a season, how do you mentally get over that hump?
Yeah, I think you don't really think about the regular season, because certainly, in our second round game, we could face Chippewa Falls or Superior, teams we've played, and you kind of try to treat them as a unique entity. That's one of the things we've tried to do in the last couple of years, is not think about have we played this or have we had success against this team or not had success, because it's a one-time deal. You get one shot at it, so there has to be a sense of urgency and a heightened sense of anticipation and preparation that take place. And regardless of the outcomes, those kind of get washed away, because you know as well as I do, you've been around basketball in the state long enough. When you face a team that, you either beaten twice or they've beaten you twice, that third game is so tricky and so difficult to deal with that if you get wrapped up in kind of the mental side of it, I think you lose sight of the actual preparation for that team. So we try to always start with a clean slate. We'll certainly watch some of the films that we've played against each other, but again, we'll kind of be prepping based on recent films to see some tendencies and see if there are some slight tweaks that we can make along the way to change up if we're the team that's lost twice, and if we're the team that's won twice, we still want to be on our toes and trying to anticipate any potential wrinkles that team might throw against us.
All right, Coach, I've got Dan Ross next to me here. We're up against a little bit of a time limit, but I know he's got one very important question for you.
Hey, Coach, congratulations on a great season. Well-deserved number one seed. There's a renewed interest across the state of adding some teams from Division I to the state tournament, right? Going back to 8 teams. And the way that this sectional kind of geographically plays out, we got eight or nine teams from the western part and then the central part, and the rest are, I guess, Fox Valley schools, or at least that area. What are your thoughts about going back to 8 teams in Division I?
Yeah, I think I'm a huge proponent of that. And I started my career coaching at the small school, so I certainly understand, the idea of trying to create, equal teams there. But after competing last year with last year's team, and I know Coach Rubbis would echo the same, when we played in that sectional semifinal against Neenah, that game really was a game that should have been featured on the state level. You had multiple Division I players that people in the state of Wisconsin should have had the ability to tune in and watch. So I'm a huge proponent of that. When we look at the large size of the school sizes and how it represents in the Division I, we have almost 40% of the student population. I think those opportunities exist to give some of those schools an opportunity to play and some of the elite talent in our state to showcase themselves there. So I'm a proponent of it, and I understand, like I said, both sides of it. I think it's a unique position that I'm in terms of, having coached at Mondovi for 11 years, a Division IV school, and grew up playing at Royal High School. They were Division III when I was playing. Now they're a Division V school, and cut my teeth as a Bangor girls coach. They're a Division V girls program, so I've kind of seen all the divisions across in my time, and I know, as not just as a coach but as a fan, I really appreciate the talent level and the skill level that 8 teams brought to state at the D1 level, and hopefully we can find something that works out for everybody. And no one's ever going to be happy with one solution, but I think we do need to consider getting back to 8 teams at Division I.
I don't disagree, Coach.
Eau Claire Memorial Old Abe's head coach Chad Brisky. Good luck the rest of the way.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for all the coverage of the state. You guys do an outstanding job of promoting high school sports, and we're lucky to have people like you doing that here in the state of Wisconsin.
Thanks, Coach. Thank you. Yeah, all right. Well, that was good. That was a good chat.
Yeah.
Right there. So, yeah, we also learned Coach was a Royal Lion, Bangor Cardinal, Mondovi Buffalo, and now an Old Abe. He's working his way right from the birds to the mammals.
Yeah.
Back to a bird now.
Yeah, and something that I think maybe is worth stating, Division I is a beast all its own, right? The number 1 seed in D1 means that the 1-16 and the 1-8 or the 1-9 game, those are close games. Mm-hmm. In the other divisions, those first round, second round games are not going to be that close.
Usually not.
Division I, it is a battle. Every single night it's a battle.
Yeah, and it's just a numbers game, right? You've got the large enrollment, and out of that you get to pick the best, 12 to 15 basketball players, and you just have a better chance at hitting on 5 of them than you do in a school with 200 enrollment or whatever it might be. All right, so Eau Claire Memorial starts out as the one, and we talked about Hudson. We're going to take a moment after we're through this section to kind of come back to Hudson and talk about them and what being the 2 seed might mean.
And they're really good. Hudson's really good.
They are really good, and we're going to talk, though, to Coach Chris Fisher of the Marshfield Tigers, one of the teams that beat the Hudson Raiders this year. So we're going to talk to him, and Coach may be able to shed a light on how to beat the Raiders for anybody that cares to hear about that. We'll see if we have time to talk to Coach about that. But I know first we want to get Coach's impression on his seed. So we bring in Marshfield Tigers basketball coach Chris Fisher, and the Tigers are the number 5 seed. Coach, we'll start right with that. Your reaction on the 5 seed as you start playoff action in 2 Fridays.
I guess I don't have a whole lot to say about it. We were anticipating somewhere between the 4 and the 5, and a couple things that I thought we had going in our favor were the fact that we did have 17 wins, which was the second most of anybody in the sectional, and one thing that used to mean a heck of a lot, and I know it's still one of the criteria, is the number of wins or your record against teams in your sectional. We were 11-3 against teams in our sectional, which was the most wins out of anybody in our sectional. So I really thought that those 2 things were going in our favor. But when we got the 5 seed, at this point, it's you can throw the numbers out the window. I truly believe, and I'm not just saying this, I truly believe that this sectional might be the most wide open sectional of anything in the state. There's legitimately 10 to 12 teams that could lay claim to being a really good basketball team and playing really well at this time and could easily come out of this sectional. So no matter what we were going to get seeded, we were going to have our hands full. It's going to be a pretty deep and exciting time of the year here.
Coach, I haven't talked to you since Friday, so we need to step aside from playoff talk just for a moment to congratulate you on your 2nd consecutive Wisconsin Valley Conference title.
Thank you very much. It's the culmination of a lot of hard work, and it's the culmination of a lot of hard work by a lot of people, coaching staff and players and youth program directors and middle school coaches and support from parents and schools and community. It's an exciting time to be a member of our program. And, if we continue to put ourselves in this position, at the top of our conference, that's going to lead to favorable seeding come March. So we're excited to win another conference championship, but there's a lot more that we want to accomplish.
Talking to Marshfield Tigers coach Chris Fisher. Coach, you mentioned your record against your sectional opponents. You split between Eau Claire Memorial and Hudson. You beat Hudson. You lost to Memorial. Both games in Marshfield. What did you learn about your team during those two games in particular?
I learned that we could compete at a high level. We played Eau Claire Memorial very early in December, and we struggled against them defensively. And I think after that game, and maybe one or two more games, we started to figure out how we could best guard teams that have the offensive firepower like Eau Claire Memorial. So they taught us a lot, and it was good preparation for us. And the win against Hudson was a nice win for us. It was a part of a back-to-back. It was the second of a back-to-back, so it was a good win there. And, we feel if we're competing at a high level against the number 1 and 2 seeds in our sectional, we feel pretty good about ourselves heading into the playoffs here.
Coach, for a while there, I don't know if you watched the broadcast, and maybe it's best if you don't, but there was a time early in the season calling your games, you were 0-3, so I stepped away for a while, and you started winning, and so I took that as I made the right decision for you. And then the game I came back for was your game against Hudson, so maybe there was something to that. I don't know. I've got Dan Ross next to me. Dan helps with a lot of stuff around here, including some of the math. I know he's got a question for you.
Absolutely. Sure. We will never have the final numbers, Coach, on the difference between you and Hortonville for the 4-5. We went to bed last night with you as the 4, so it was really close. We don't have the exact numbers, obviously, right?
Sure.
But it was really close. So my question is, if this were 2-3 years ago when you're sitting in a seating meeting with all of these schools, do you think you had an argument to be the 4 and be able to host that regional final with Hortonville in the room?
Yeah, we would have had an argument. If, in all honesty, if this is a face-to-face coaches meeting, I'm probably arguing for the 2 based on our win against Hudson, based on the 11 wins that we have in our sectional, and based on being a conference champion. That's what I would argue. Now, obviously, a lot of times when you argue that, you know full well that it might not take place. But there's also a chance that we could have gotten a worse seed too. I was trying to crunch numbers myself, because when you have this computerized seating and me being a math guy, you really want to try to put yourself in a position where you're going to reward your kids and your program and your players for their hard work and for their success they've had so far. So just like you, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to move forward from here. So I don't know what the best way is. Clearly, there's nothing we can do about our conference schedule, and that's where things didn't go well for us the most.
Yeah.
If you look at our non-conference strength of schedule, our non-conference opponents were at about a 54% winning percentage, which was very similar to the non-conference schedule that Hortonville had, for example. We had to schedule 12 non-conference games, but it can be really, really difficult to project how good a team's going to be because you have to schedule those in a year in advance. A perfect example for us is we got invited down to play at the shootout, the Mark Miller tournament down in Concordia, and we played Janesville, Parker, and Brookfield East. Now, Mark Miller will invite teams that he thinks are going to be good or have really good players. Well, Janesville Parker struggled this year at a 7-15 record. Brookfield East was preseason number 2 in the state. Well, they had a couple injuries and they were below 500. So before the season starts, you look at our schedule and we've got a pretty good non-conference schedule. But at the end of the year, you've got a couple of teams where things don't go their way. They're an injury away or so. And all of a sudden we get dinged a little bit more in our non-conference. So if it was as close as we think it was, you're looking at a couple of games here and there, that your opponents don't win, where maybe we could have snuck to that 4. So I don't think we're going to do anything differently in terms of how we schedule our non-conference opponents. We like to play the Big River schools. We like to play the Fox Valley schools. We like to play schools that are in our sectional, and we're going to continue to do that.
Coach Jason here again. I think what's going to happen is you and I are going to sit down sometime this spring with a couple of drinks that have some suds on the top of them, and I'm going to show you the computer, and we're going to kind of spot check each other's math. I look forward to that.
Yeah, I do too.
Good. Marshfield Tigers coach Chris Fisher, best of luck going forward.
Thanks, Jason. Roll Tigers.
Thanks, Coach.
So, Coach brought up a lot of really interesting points. The one that I had brought up during the 3 o'clock show, that was, again, Marshfield Tigers basketball coach Chris Fisher. We thank him for his time. Was Marshfield the Wisconsin Valley Conference champion, seeded 5th? And if chalk holds, they'll be in a regional final at Hortonville, the 6th place Fox Valley team. That's what he was referencing with his own conference.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to tell Coach that he's probably a little bit beat up. This guy right here was probably more beat up somehow.
I roll Tigers all day long.
Yeah. I dangled that carrot to you last night about Marshfield being the 4, and I just felt like your eyes were big at home last night.
Yeah, and it was probably a very fine line, and which would mean if chalk holds, that would be a very good regional final for you to attend and head over to wherever it is. Now, I'm sure Marshfield wouldn't be sad at all if Holman beat Hortonville on next week Friday.
No, I mean, you probably cheer for that if you're a Marshfield Tiger fan.
Yeah, and in all due credit though, Marshfield hosted its own regional final last year, and that was to a really good Kimberly team, and got beat by Kimberly last year at home in a regional final. So maybe road's a good thing to do.
Yeah,
maybe. So okay, I know the guys are efforting our next coach, and if I have it right, Oliver Drake. Yeah, all right. It was just all by memory there, but yeah, DC Everest in the same section. Again, we're talking about Division 1, Section 1, which involves a vast majority of Wisconsin Valley, Fox Valley, and Big Rivers basketball teams. It's a really well put together sectional.
Yeah, and when I asked the question to the Memorial coach of what if this were split in half, right? Because when I was in school, which was in the 90s, right? I don't want to age myself too much. The late 90s, this Division I sectional was Eau Claire Memorial, Eau Claire North, Wausau West, DC Everest, Wausau East maybe was in there. So it was the Eau Claire schools, it was Hudson, it was Superior, and then the Wausau schools. And that was the whole sectional, right? How is that not better than what we have now? Right, because these are all teams that know each other. They're all close. You don't have to travel very far for any of these games. I would love to see it.
Well, maybe just maybe, right? If we double the amount of state teams, go ahead, Mike. We'll bring in DC Everest boys basketball coach Oliver Drake, coach in his first year with the Evergreens, and led his team to a number 7 seed. Coach, let's just kind of reflect on the year up until today. I'll let you have it from there.
Well, first off, thanks for the opportunity to be on the show. Appreciate all the coverage you guys have provided our area athletes and teams, and it's been an interesting year. We're one of the teams that has beaten the number 1 seed in our sectional, and also a team that almost got beat by one of the worst teams in our sectional. So I think number one, it shows you the parity and just shows you how deep our sectional is, and just kind of shows you. I think what high school basketball is, right? Like everybody knows each other. Everybody plays against each other during the summer. And unlike maybe when I was growing up, there's just not as much, or there's just a lot more. Everybody's pretty familiar with one another. So our season kind of reflects that. There's been some really good wins in there. There's been some games in there where we would like to have had them back. We've had to learn from some really tough losses. And then, I don't think we've played our best basketball yet, and that's what I'm really, really excited about. Hopefully, we've saved the best for last, and that's what we're looking forward to, the opportunity to play our best basketball, and it means the most.
Talking to DC Everest basketball coach Oliver Drake, you talked about knowing everybody or getting to know everybody. Well, you got to know Appleton East head coach Turner Botts, also in his first year of coaching, back in December. That was a game that you lost. It was a neutral site game, but a game that you lost. Now, though, you get that rematch to open up the playoffs. Tell us about that.
Yeah, they're really, really good. They have 2 Division II players, one guy going to Winona State and one going to Hillsdale. They're extremely big on their front line, 6'8", 6'7", bring another 6'7" guy off the bench. And then they have a point guard who's a junior, who's a really dynamic player and coach's kid. So we're certainly going to have our hands full. It was a game, every game you lose, you feel like you didn't play very well, but that one especially. And again, I think Appleton East had a lot to do with that. We were playing in the Crest Center at UWGB, and we didn't shoot the ball well. And as you know, we're kind of built around some 3-point shooting, and when we don't shoot it well, we're really susceptible to get knocked off. So hopefully, being back on our home floor and, like you said, being familiar with our opponent and just the opportunity to play a really, really good team. I mean, some of their wins are against the who's who of high school hoops. So we'll certainly have our hands full. We know how good they are. They certainly showed us that up close and personal. And we got a lot of work to do to have an opportunity to beat them.
Coach, you said it. You open up the playoffs at home. Tell us about being first-year coach at DC Everest, what the home atmosphere has been like, and then what you want it to be like next week on Friday.
Yeah, well, you bring up a great point. Home games don't mean anything if you don't have a home environment. So we've certainly had some games where we've had a great home environment. We will certainly need that. We'll need any boost we can get to take on a really good Fox Valley team. So our home environment's been, pretty good. As you guys know, there's just so much going on for high school kids and people nowadays. It's hard to slow down and find a night where you can get out and support local athletic teams. And so hopefully it's been a little bit of time since we've had a home game. And it's been some time since we've won a game as well. So hopefully those factors, hosting a game against a really good opponent and then couple that with we need to get off this, postseason slide. And then lastly, having 3 really good seniors in our program and one of the best players in the entire state. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think Marcus Hall is. I would think our crowd will be out in full force to support us.
Coach, as you know, we've been on the Marcus Hall train all year. It's been a pleasure watching him play for all these years. I've got, by the way, talking to DC Everest head coach Oliver Drake. Got Dan Ross next to me, Coach. I know he's got a question for you.
Hey, Coach. Congratulations on a great season. So my question is, if the Evergreens were to make a run in this tournament, let's say you win 1, 2, maybe even 3 games, who on the team has stepped up for you?
Well, I think we're we're talking about the same guy, and that's not that he's even stepped up. It's just Marcus, and we've talked about this behind the scenes with him. It's time where he's got to just start taking some games over from a scoring standpoint. If you watch him, he's so unselfish and sets his teammates up so much, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, as we all know, in the biggest moments, the biggest games, and in tournament runs, your main guys take over those games. And so I think we need Marcus Hall to take his game to a whole nother level, which he's fully capable of doing. I think we need him to be a shoot first, which is, not really in his DNA. This year he's been more of a pass first and set his teammates up and get them going first. And because he's all about winning and he knew he needed his teammates to have a better season. But I think, you got to have your best guys playing their best basketball when it means the most. And we really look forward to seeing Marcus do that for us.
Coach, back to Jason as we begin to wrap things up. If chalk holds, you would take on Hudson in a regional final 2 Saturdays from now. That would be at Hudson. They played Marshfield, a team you saw twice this year. What do you think you can learn from a team that you know a little bit better about a team that you may go on the road to play that's a top seed in your bracket?
Well, I guess I haven't thought too much about it because I'm, when we got the Appleton East, I was like, wow, that's a really, really good 10 seed. So that's kind of where all my mind's been on, is kind of Appleton East and figuring out a way and obviously figuring out a way to finish the regular season off with 2 more games. But yeah, if the chalk holds, I think we'll know more once we start diving into that film, but obviously watching a lot of film throughout the year, you see bits and pieces of teams that maybe you're not preparing for because you're preparing for another team that played them. And obviously we're familiar with the big rivers we took on, Eau Claire Memorial, Chippewa, and Eau Claire North, all out of that league. And we were, fortunate to be on the right side of those. So we're familiar with that league. But any of these games, especially a 7-10 game, and then you move on beyond that, you're just playing such good teams. So doesn't matter who we play, whoever's in that second round, if we're fortunate enough to get there, we're going to have our hands full, just like the first round. So we got a lot of work to do, but I certainly hope the chalk holds. And if it does, it's going to be a lot of fun to make that trip west and take on a really good Hudson team if they hold up their end as well.
DC Everest Evergreens head coach Oliver Drake, it's been a lot of fun watching your team. Good luck going forward.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you guys.
All right, there we go. We're moving right through this, Dan. A couple of things. One is we're an hour through this already, and we're just mowing right the coaches down. Mike, you can turn my headset up just a little bit more. It may just – there we go. Oh, yeah.
You're getting old.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm battling with an inner ear. I told you I had trouble standing at your state championship game on Monday, but I think I'm on the mend right now. But I am getting old. Thank you for that. We heard from a number of coaches here in this section. I don't think we learned some things. I don't know though that I could accurately pick this section after hearing from them.
Yeah. Again, Division I. I don't want to say that every game's a coin toss, but it seems like these first round games, a lot could happen, more so than other divisions in the first or second round. If you want to call the 16, 17.
The Friday's the first round. No offense.
Yeah.
But Friday's the first round.
So those Friday games, outside of probably Memorial and Hudson, and maybe Hortonville, maybe who's the 3 seed here? Oshkosh North.
Yeah.
Even the 5-12, it's just like March Madness, right? Like that 4-13 can be tricky. The 5-12 is maybe a toss-up. Everything else is a toss-up.
You talked back to the math and Marshfield a little bit. I think at one point, Marshfield was trending on that 6 line. And then as we thought they had moved to a 4 last night, we thought through the games that were counted through Saturday night, but Marshfield had just beat Wausau West, even though it wasn't a very spectacular game. It was 35. Trevor was there, 45-35 or something like that, right? So it wasn't a spectacular win. It was, though, a conference clinching win. And then all at the same time, you mentioned, some of these teams lost. Oshkosh North lost, and Memorial lost, and some of these other teams that they needed for that math lost. And I think when Coach Fisher and I sit down for that drink that's got the suds on top, we might be able to kind of parse through that a little bit.
Yeah, especially you mentioned the 4, 5, 6, super, super close.
Yeah, razor thin margin between all of them. Again, just look through this bracket here, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And we're going to bring a lot of these games to you live. We'll show highlights to you of some of the others. Again, the live broadcast schedule starting on Tuesday. That's girls playoffs. Will be posted sometime on Monday tomorrow. So we'll show you at ZaleskiSports.com. Just click weekly schedule, and we'll show you all of our girls playoff broadcasts. We still have some boys regular season games that we'll show, but our attention's really turning to the playoffs right now. And then next week, and I say that because at the broadcast table, we're often watching the other games at the same time.
Absolutely.
Can't get enough.
Most of the local conferences are all wrapped up too, right? So the boys are mostly playing for momentum going into the playoffs. I know that the Valley's clinched, Big Rivers is clinched, I believe.
Yeah, we're looking for an outright champ for the Merriwood South yet, but by and large, or the people that share have already laid claim to all of them. So where are we moving to now, Mike? Who do we have? All right, we're going to move to Division 5, and go ahead and bring John on. No offense, Dan, to the other coaches that we've talked to so far, but I've been waiting to talk to these D5 coaches in this bracket because this is juicy, and we start right near the top. It's the number 2 seeded Pacelli Cardinals and its head coach John Sherk. Coach, we'll jump right into it. Your thoughts on being the 2 seed starting in next week's playoffs?
Oh, we're really excited. I think it's a great opportunity. The boys worked hard to get to this point. We felt that at the 1 or 2, either one was a good position. It really didn't make much of a difference to us. And we just were crossing our fingers that it went our way. We knew we had Athens on our butt trying to take that 2 seed, and we kind of closed the season out up to this point to lock that in.
Yeah, absolutely. Athens did have a resume. They play in a conference that from top to bottom a little bit tougher than yours, so the math kind of leans their way to begin with. But definitely your season of work ended with the accomplishment of a number 2 seed, and it also ended a couple days ago with a conference championship. Just catch us up with when the season began and you and the boys were making some season goals up until a couple days ago, you clinched that conference championship. Just talk about the plan versus the reality this year.
Well, we talked as a team of having a lot of small goals to get to the big goal. One of the things that we started off with is just getting better throughout the season. And I felt we did that. I felt, the boys really came a long ways. How we've evolved as a team has been huge. Just the amount of teamwork, and we have multiple guys, that are scoring, and I think that's been huge. That's kind of where we started with. Let's just focus on these and our small goals, and then we will accomplish our larger goals as we go on through the season. And as one of our seniors, Bennett Eckendorf, made a comment after Clinton Conference solely against Wild Rose the other night. He reassured the guys saying, "Hey, we've accomplished one, but we got plenty more to go yet."
Talking to Pacelli Cardinals head coach John Sherk, you're slated to take on Gresham at home on Tuesday. That's February 28th, so that's 2 Tuesdays from now. A game, obviously, Coach, I'll tell you, you'll be favored in. You'll probably be favored in by quite a bit in that game for those that keep track of those types of things. So on the other side of your pod is the number 7 seed Northland Lutheran and the number 10 seed Marion. How do you go about planning for that next game? And maybe you've got some advantages with your team and how they stack up against Gresham to go in and do some advanced scouting for that next game.
Yeah, right. We're in this situation where you hate to ever overlook games, but at this point, we feel we can go in there and take care of business on next Tuesday, and definitely look to see what we're going to be faced with in the next round. No disrespect to Gresham, we feel this is where we are. And, it's going to be interesting. We really don't know those other two teams. Since I've been here the past 5 years, we have not played them. We do have a little experience in some of our conference playing them, so we will rely a little bit on that as well to try to pick them apart, how we match up compared to how our conference matched up to them.
Coach, I've got, by the way, we're talking to Pacelli Cardinals head coach John Sherk. Got Dan Ross next to me. I know he's called one or two of your games this year. I know he's got an important question for you.
Yeah, hey, Coach. Okay. Congratulations. Terrific season. Obviously, a really, really strong team this year. Next year is going to be a really good one as well. But talking about this year, and I have paid a lot of attention to the CWC South over the years, this feels like the strongest that the conference has been in recent memory. Am I completely off base with that, or what are your opinions on the trajectory of the CWC South?
Well, I think our top end, is very heavy right now. But I got to look back when I first started with Pacelli, and I feel back to that point 5 years ago, I felt the top 6 teams are all extremely competitive. So I really don't want to take away from what those other past players and the coaches what they've done, because I thought it was really a coin flip. Like I said 4 or 5 years ago, who could win those games.
Thank you for that, Coach. Jason, back here again. In the playoffs, you got all the accomplishments in the regular season, including the conference championship. But when the playoffs come around, you've got to be better than you were in the regular season. How do you get guys like Cam Sherk and Jaden Awe and others to be better come playoff time?
I think that's the good thing about this group. I don't know if I have to get them better. I think the hunger and the drive that these kids have is just unbelievable. They're getting better, even just with their own desire. We try to keep their focus and keep maybe what direction we need to go. Remember some fundamentals and who we're playing with and who we're playing for each other. But the hunger is there, and they meet us halfway. Put it that way.
And then you mentioned Athens. We'll wrap it up with this one, Coach. You mentioned Athens before. You were able to hold off Athens in the math seed process. You're the 2 seed. The result of that is you get to host throughout the regional final, and beyond that, it's a neutral site anyway. So that's part of the accomplishment. Tell us about why playing in the Pacelli gym is a home court advantage.
Well, anytime you can play in your own gym, obviously you practice every day. You feel comfortable with the rims, the environment. You're going to have more of your fans show up. So I think that's huge. And that kind of, the old saying is, home court might give you 6-8 points right there. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I just do feel it's more of the comfort zone. And when you play against your home court, I think there's a little more desire to play for your fans. Put on the show for the fans, and you want to protect your place. So I think there's a little bit of that. Anytime you get a home game, is like you feel like you definitely have to take the challenge and step up.
Yeah, your fans, your teammates, your student peers in the stands, your mom, your dad, maybe the mayor shows up, who knows, but you get all that opportunity. Coach, thanks for calling in, and best of luck in the playoffs next week.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. That was Pacelli Cardinals head coach John Sherk. And, there's one thing, I don't know if we've talked to another 2 seed yet, and if I did, I forgot. But in this format, where it's just the top 2, in Division I, it's the top 4 that get to host. But here it's the top 2, and pretty important to hold those top 2 spots. Yeah,
I mean, you get 3 home games, right? The first round bye doesn't really exist in Division V because of the number of teams. And there are real tight turnarounds, right? You have Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. And that Friday, Saturday, it is a whirlwind. And not having to put an extra trip in there is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, and especially because you said next year Pacelli still be a good team. That means they're still young this year. And so to have those games at home, dealing with that Friday, Saturday turnaround in particular, but the 3 games in the week, for a young team, that's got to be an advantage.
Yeah, and gaining experience, right? This particular Division 5 sectional, I love it.
Yeah.
Right? We are really close to it. A lot of the teams are really, really good, right? Teams that, if they make it to state, have a chance to win the entire thing. And it's really good for us to play what-if games on our end. But I'd love to see Pacelli Athens. Just from a loving sports standpoint, I'd love to see Newman play Pacelli, right? Because play each other. Like the 2 Catholic schools, they don't really play each other. It would be great to see.
Dan, your timing is impeccable as we bring on Newman Catholic Fighting Cardinals head coach Jeff Waldvogel, and let's start right with that, Coach. It's your first year at Newman Catholic. Back in the olden days, your school would play all the other Catholic schools in something that was called WISA. But there's an opportunity. You may face a couple of your old WISA schools throughout this. But you're the number 1 seed. Let's first talk about that and tell us about your season accomplishment, ending with the number 1 seed.
It was a great year, and let me touch on that Pacelli Newman rivalry.
Okay.
I played at Newman. I went to school at Newman for up until my junior year, and we played against Tom Saxelby, and he beat our team 3 times. It was all 12 games, but we lost to Pacelli. So hopefully we get to that game. We have a little bit of better luck with me as a coach. As far as how the season, it's been a great season. We had a lot of great games on our schedule. I'm sure every team has. As you know, just recently we just went through a really tough part of our schedule with Platteville over at just the game in the Dells. And then 3 days later we went to Columbus High School, and that was another really nice game. 3 nights later we went to Marathon and played over there. And then yesterday we took a trip down to Stoughton. What more can I say? Those 4 games, the total points are separated by 6 points. Really good teams. There were times we were uncomfortable in them games. Just about every one of them games came down to 1 possession at the end, and we were able to make a play and win the game, or we didn't make the play and we lost. So as far as how our season went, it's been a great season so far, and we're looking forward to the playoffs.
Talking to Newman Catholic head coach Jeff Waldvogel. Coach, you brought it up, and we talk about this on this side, especially as it pertains to postseason seeding with the mathematical process. You schedule tough, and you will be rewarded in the seed process. But talk about scheduling tough and helping your team get better throughout the season with those tough opponents.
Yes. There's one thing, are you prepared for this final stretch of the season, and the final stretch being the tournament? Everybody plays 24 games. There's highs, there's lows, and then the ultimate goal is to do the best at the end of the year. And all I can say is these last 4 games were the intensity, the atmosphere, the competitiveness, the great play that took place in these games, the tightness of the game. All of them things I like, and I think are going to help us as we move forward.
Coach, I like that you brought that up because, the intensity, I happen to be in the gym in Marathon with you on Friday night. That intensity is there for sure. When the playoffs begin on Tuesday night, there's probably going to be a dip. You play Tri-County. They haven't won yet a game.
Yep.
How do you keep your guys focused on what the intensity was and what it will be again should you get past Tri-County?
Well, our practices, and really the mentality of these guys. We have a great team. We've got 7 seniors now. Great leadership. We've got a good young group that competes hard against them. We work on staying focused and sharp in practice. And I don't think there'll be a setback 2 weeks from now. But what I'm going to say is the focus, the desire to win, the will to win, that drive is in that gym every day that we go to practice.
I'm certainly very glad to hear of that. Coach, I've got Dan Ross next to me. I know you know Dan. He's got a couple questions for you.
Hey, Coach, congratulations on the great season. A very well-deserved number 1 seed, I would honestly say. I actually have a non-basketball question for you. It's a basketball show, so let's talk non-basketball. Talking about the kids on your team, I have experienced it firsthand last year, this year, that they are genuinely really good young men, right? And we don't see that a lot on basketball teams all across the state, right? But your kids go out of their way to compliment us, to compliment other people in the stands. What are you doing different here at Newman than other schools are to really focus on being good role models for younger kids?
Well, I'm going to say that it starts with their parents. They all have a great set of parents, and what their parents have instilled in them is moved with them throughout their classrooms and schooling, through the Catholic schools, and now at Newman High School. Individually, they're just wonderful kids to be around. As a group, they're great together. You see it on the court. They help one another get up if if someone hits the deck. If an opponent falls to the floor, they're right there to pick them up. Those things are really been taught by, instilled in the family values that come with the Catholic education.
Yeah. Dan, thanks for asking that question. I thought that was a really good question. Coach, we'll wrap it up with this. Back to Jason here. During the season, your team has averaged over 70 points a game. Does it have to be that way during the playoffs? You mentioned some of the games you played recently. They've all been on the higher end. Or can you win a lower scoring game come playoff time?
Yes. We had great experience with that at Stoughton. The final down there was 58-55 in overtime. And, we had gotten on after the game at Marathon. Obviously, we had a game at Stoughton, and we got on the bus that day. And on the way down, we talked a little bit about at Columbus, we fell behind, and then we forged a 7-point lead. And then we gave it up pretty quick. Then at Marathon, 3 nights later, we trailed most of the first half, and we got out to a couple, and then maintained that 5-point lead for a little while and gave it up pretty quickly. And we talked about being able to take care of the ball, run through some offense, and work on that in the Stoughton game and in the Stratford game. We've got a game with Stratford next Thursday that we feel is very important, and they're a very good team. So we're going to work on a lower possession game, being able to play against a team that wants to hold the ball or be able to, and then of course we want to play the game that we like to play, which is up and down.
Newman Catholic Fighting Cardinals head coach Jeff Waldvogel, it has been fun watching your team play all this season. I wish a bunch of our teams could keep playing. I know in the end there's only one. Best of luck the rest of the way.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Coach, we'll talk to you again soon. That was Newman Catholic head coach Jeff Waldvogel. In his first year, he was, I don't know, I guess I'd be putting words into his mouth if I said it, but he may have been kind of put into a tough spot, yet he was put into a good spot with this team.
Yeah, there are worse places to go into, right? The Newman Catholic Cardinals had a great team last year. They lost in the sectional semis to Columbus Catholic.
I was there.
Yeah, I was there with you. I was on the call. And a little maybe foreshadowing, right, for maybe a regional final this year. Columbus is the 4 seed.
It's got potential.
Yeah. Of course, we're not playing the games. We're not coaching it. We want these juicy matchups, right? But yeah, Coach Waldvogel came into a senior-laden team, one that was primed for a state run, and he's done nothing but keep them on that path.
And their path looks good. We're going to talk to Assumption Royals head coach Josh Pitz here in a matter of seconds. We're going to talk to Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi coming up in a few minutes. Those could be teams he's got to beat along the way. We talked to Coach Sherk from Pacelli. That could be a team he's got to beat along the way. He's got a lot of teams that he would need to beat along the way, and perhaps one of them are the Assumption Catholic Royals. And we bring now Assumption head coach Josh Pitz in the show. Coach, you got Jason and Dan here. We've talked on and off. Hi there. Talked on and off about the seed process. We had you as the 8 seed. We had Wild Rose as the 9. The rule says when the 8-9 matches up, the tie goes to the regular season winner, which in this case was Wild Rose. So your thoughts on being on the road and being a 9 seed come next week?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. Hi, Danny. Hi, Jason. It's easier for me to accept, I guess, is the easy way to put it, because I've had you guys in my back pocket the last few weeks. The other day, we get to play a quality opponent that we've played so far this year. We played up in Wild Rose back in January. Like I said, they're a quality team, and up and down, they were the better team that night. And the way things are going nowadays in WIAA, there's certain games you have to win, and there's certain games that you cannot lose. And unfortunately, that was one of those games that you couldn't lose if you wanted a home game. And Wild Rose got us that night, so we made the bed that we're laying in.
Coach, I'll tell you, the easiest way is just to win them all.
It's that easy, isn't
it? Coach, tell us a little bit about your team. You've got a guard, Ryan Shaw, that if you can get in a couple playoff games, might reach 1,000 points in his career. You've got some other pieces. Tell us about your team coming into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a group of kids that I've been coaching in multiple different sports ever since they've been in 6th and 7th grade. And this group of boys means the world to me. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be coaching at Assumption, obviously a high school that I graduated from, and to take over a program last year that obviously wasn't in the best place overall. And for these group of boys to buy into what I'm preaching and what my assistant coaches are preaching means a lot to us. And like I said, these 5 seniors I would go to war with, and I wouldn't pick any other kids to coach any other day.
Talking to Assumption Royals head coach Josh Pitz. Coach, a couple of years ago, you held up a gold trophy. You were a state champion with the girls team. You just said now in your second year with the boys team. Have you been able to take any of that with you from that state championship over to the boys side?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I knew when the boys job opened, it's something I've definitely dreamed about and wanted to be a boys coach. I was on the girls staff for those 6 years, and obviously ended in the crossover with a gold ball. And going through the process, doing things the correct way, only helped me grow as a person, as a coach, as a leader, as someone for these young high school boys to look up to. And it just makes you more and more hungry. There's no doubt about it. And like I said, it was tough leaving a program like we have at our girls here at Assumption that's the top of the state every year in and out. And the boys have been down a little bit, and that's the challenge I want. It's a challenge that I guess I could have taken the easy road and continued to be the assistant coach on the girls program and continue to win a bunch of ball games and keep loading up that trophy case. But as a past boys basketball player, there's nothing more rewarding than to see other young men go through Assumption and and hopefully one day be able to raise their own ball.
Coach Paul, it's Dan Ross here. So,
Hi, Danny.
Hey, hello. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the toughness of the conferences that are in this particular sectional, right? We got the Marywood South, of course, couple of Marywood North teams. We have the CWC South, some CWC North teams, just Clover Belt, a lot of different conferences, right? Talk about the strength of the Marywood South and how that makes you a better team going into the tournament than if you were same record somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the main talk around the area. But there's not another conference that ever be. There's not a easy night in Marywood. Never will be. Never has been. We were able to fill with Edgar this year, and they've got a fantastic club. You got Auburndale twice. You got Marathon twice. You obviously have Newman twice. Stratford twice. Up at the Marywood North, there's not an easy game up there either. And there's been talk here and there about Assumption possibly leaving the Marywood, and I'm against it. I absolutely love the Marywood. Being battle tested every single night does make you better. Unfortunately, the way the WIAA has changed the seedings and the way the computers work, you have to win and win a lot of those ball games. And being the smallest school and the toughest D4, D5 conference in the state of Wisconsin is obviously tough. But to be 17-3 at the CWC North, or to be 10-13 where we're at, I think we are a much better ball club at 10-13, being battle tested night in and night out than we would be being in CWC North. And again, absolutely no disrespect to those squads, but there's just being battle tested against Newman twice and Marathon and the Auburndales and the Edgars and Marathons right down the line. There's just no better basketball in the area, in my opinion.
So if this was a coaches meeting, what would you ask for? Because that's the first thing you do is you make your case for where you think you should be. Where do you think you should be?
In my opinion, I think we are the sixth best team in the sectional. People may or may not know there's 16 teams obviously in our sectional, and straight to schedule, we are the number one team with the hardest schedule, starting with Columbus and Newman early in the year. Obviously, both times we play them at one point in the season, they're number one. Marathon's been ranked in the States. Pacelli's been ranked in the States. Auburndale's been ranked in the States. And again, there's absolutely zero disrespect to other schools in the area. But it's just unfortunate how we do not get rewarded by playing in the Marywood unless we win those games. Justin Beck from Port Edwards has done a fabulous job, and unfortunately they had a massive injury to one of their seniors. But we actually played them down to fight for them and ended up beating them by 29 points. The other night we hosted Northern Lutheran, who ended up getting a 7th seed by 35 points. It's just unfortunate that we have to change our non-conference schedule in order to get a higher seed in the new WIAA seedings.
Coach, back to Jason. We'll wrap it up with this one. I know you mentioned the 6. There is, though, perhaps something redeeming about where you landed as the 8, but with the tiebreaker, you're playing as the 9, and that is you get to go for redemption. And as a former student athlete, and I guess at this point a former athlete, there's sometimes nothing sweeter than getting some revenge, getting some redemption. What's got to be different this time at Wild Rose?
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% correct. Jake has done a phenomenal job over there. I've got to know Jake over the years outside of basketball. He's a great guy. He's done a fantastic job with his group. At the end of the day, we just need to be better. I think the boys went into that game possibly overlooking them, and as soon as you start doing that, it goes downhill pretty quick. The other day, we got to lock down on defense. It always starts and ends with defense, in my opinion. We're playing much better basketball here in the second half, and like I said, Wild Rose is a fantastic team. There's no disrespect there, and they deserve the 8th seed over us because they straight up beat us the first time. So we're looking forward to that matchup, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, go ahead, Dan. Wrap it up. We got 30 seconds.
All right. One more question. So Jason Zaleski here calls you a former athlete.
No, I'm a former athlete.
Sure. What are you averaging in men's league this year, Coach Paul?
That's a good question. I know my assistant coaches are listening. I go top of the key. I shoot a lot of threes, and I'll say 15 a game. I probably give up 30.
There he goes. He's at hockey. He's minus 15 on his line. Coach Josh Pauls of the Assumption Royals. Best of luck when the playoffs kick off next week.
Hey, thank you guys for everything. We appreciate you.
Okay, got it, Coach. Yeah, minus 15. If you're minus 15 in hockey, you don't get ice time. That much I know. Mike, right? You're minus 15. There's no way you're getting ice time. There's no way. Mike, our resident hockey expert here.
Could you imagine playing in a men's league?
Today? No.
It would be so tough.
No.
It would be so tough.
Again, on Monday, I could hardly stand up. Are you kidding me?
I know.
I can't shoot a basketball.
I run a little bit with the junior college kids, and it just like I was never that fast. Like in the early 40s, like mid 40s, there's no chance.
Well, Dan, I'm sad. We've only got one coach left. The 2 hours, and you know it will. It'll just go by so fast. And
well, I'm sure we got a lot of coaches here we could call.
Well, okay. All right. Get more pizza. We're staying until midnight. We're going to talk to Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi, or at least he's on the schedule. He sometimes can be hard to track down, but our plan is to talk to Coach to finish off. He's the hammer on today's show. He's got the number 4 seeded Columbus Catholic Dons coming into the tournament. And we've talked to some of these coaches about chalk, and we've talked about that. We get to, but when I look at this, and I know we just got done talking to Josh Pitz from Assumption, we'll effort Joe one more time in 5 minutes. So set your timer for 5 minutes. We'll call him again. If he doesn't answer, then we'll have to wrap it up. But the Newman and Columbus, and again, Coach Waldvogel said he beat Columbus last week. That's true. We're talking now about Columbus Catholic of Marshfield, not
different Columbus school
by I guess Watertown, Madison area.
Well, Columbus beat them,
and Columbus beat them, right? Yeah. Anyway,
a very close game.
But this, I think, back to the game you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, the sectional semifinal game of Wisconsin Rapids last year. I mean, it was an absolute classic.
Very good.
The game was kind of in hand with about a minute left, but it was an absolute classic. And Newman fell to Columbus that day. And if we get that in the regional final, Columbus Catholic, obviously they're going to come in, they're going to tell their guys they're the underdog, but I don't think Newman feels great about that if that happens anyway. Yeah,
Newman actually, they were rewarded with the 1 seed, but their path is not easy. They're going to get the winner of Assumption Wild Rose. Talking to Coach Pitz, Assumption feels like they're a better team. Mm-hmm. If Assumption wins, that'll be the third time playing that team.
In conference opponent.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And Assumption has kept the score somewhat close the first 2 times. And then the next round, you're talking about Columbus Catholic and then Pacelli. Out of potential teams you could play as a 1 seed, that is a murderer's row. That's as bad or as tough as it gets.
Yeah, and that's without mentioning Athens. If Athens were to, and I would say pull an upset because it would be the 3 and the 2.
To be at Pacelli,
but
be tough.
You just said them all though, right? Assumption and Athens and Pacelli and Columbus. The list is tough for Newman.
Yeah, Newman gets all of those games at home. Obviously, the Pacelli game would not be at home. It'd be wherever sectionals are.
Scheduled today for Wausau West.
Perfect. 2 miles from the house. I love it.
2 miles from your house and their house.
Yeah. It's
and 2 blocks from their school.
Yeah, from Newman, it is across the football field away.
Which is pretty funny stuff. All right, we're going to effort Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi one more time, and then we'll begin to wrap this thing up here. But again, this is boys basketball playoffs. Boys basketball playoffs, they all start in a week from Tuesday. So I keep saying this, and I don't remember the date ever. Tuesday, February 28th. Again, girls playoffs start in 2 days on Tuesday. So here at Zaleski Sports, from this point through the state tournament, the boys one that ends in Madison, we're all playoffs for the next month.
Yeah, for those watching at home, it sounds like we're going to be getting coach here. For those watching at home, drop a line in the chat if there is a game that you're dying to have us cover.
Sure. Right? Yeah. And I probably should have asked, did we have anybody asking any pertinent questions? And if they're just running their mouths, we can skip those. Okay, well, we'll talk to Dave. We'll talk about Dave after we talk to Joe Kinechi. Go ahead and pull it up, Mike. We bring in Columbus Catholic Dons boys basketball coach Joe Kinechi. Coach, 4 seed in the upcoming playoffs. Let's talk about that. Your season's work now has equaled you a 4 spot coming up next week in the playoffs. Tell us about that.
Well, I think we kind of got what we deserved. We have 7 losses. I'm proud of the way we've kind of handled some adversity this year, but I think we're in a very tough bracket with 5 or 6 teams that, 7 or 8 teams really that are really competitive. And we have our work cut out for us, but we're in the tournament and we're going to take it day by day and do what we can.
As it stands right now, first round matchup, Wisconsin Valley Lutheran. When do you go about that process of learning about your first round opponent?
Well, we watched one film today, and they play tomorrow night. We'll probably head over there and watch them. If we're fortunate enough to win that game, Alman Bancroft is another team that's really, really talented with a couple really good players. So, like I said, we have our work cut out for us in a very tough bracket, and I think all you can really do is take it a game at a time and try to be as good as what you can be. We're worried about what other teams can do, but we're hoping to get some guys back and see how good we can become ourselves.
Coach, we kind of think back to the last 5 or 6 years and the type of pedigree, the type of history that Columbus Catholic brings with it to the basketball court. That'll certainly help you come playoff time. I'll just tell you, if you're the other team sitting down the sideline from Columbus Catholic, there's a little bit of nerves with the Dons. Either you're coming to their place or you're walking into theirs. What has that pedigree meant, and how will this year's boys be able to use that to their advantage come playoff time?
Well, I think our kids do a pretty good job of staying in the moment. We've kind of been battle tested this year. We played McDonald, Heritage Christian, the Prairie School down in Milwaukee, and we've played a fairly tough schedule. Your Auburndale, Colby twice. They're a 2 or 3 seed in Division III. So it's something where I don't think our kids are going to get rattled. I don't know that we can beat all these teams. Like I said, Alman Bancroft is really good. Newman is obviously the pick to win the state championship. So we're kind of like the pressure's off, and let's see if we can survive another day. I think that's what everybody's doing, but I don't think we're going to get rattled, and I think we're going to compete and do whatever we can to try to have another practice the next day.
Talking to Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi, it seemed like for parts of the season, and you may have even mentioned it to me, one guy would get hurt, and then the next game somebody would come back, but then somebody else got hurt. That's adversity. In the playoffs, it's all about adversity. What of those situations? How will that help you come playoff time?
I hope it does. I think it's a tough situation if you're trying to scout us, because depending on what game you look at, there's 1 or 2 guys not there, so we've only had maybe 4 or 5 games, everybody healthy and available. And I think we've done a pretty good job the last couple of weeks of keeping guys out to make sure they're ready this coming week. So hopefully we have everybody back and everybody's a go here Wednesday or Thursday, and we'll see what we can do.
Talking to Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi. I know Dan Ross, I have him standing next to me. He's watched your team play all season long. I know he's got a couple questions for you.
Yeah, hey, Coach. Congratulations on the 4 seed. Very well deserved, I would say. You mentioned pressure and the kids and not feeling a whole lot of pressure, right? Rankings don't mean a whole lot, right? You came into the season the number 1 team in Division 5, fair or unfair, right? That's just one person's opinion or a couple coaches' opinions. Do you think it's easier or do you think it's tougher to go into the playoffs as that number 1 team with the target on your back, or where you guys are today?
I think personally, I think it's easier where we're at right now. We've been on the other side of it where the pressure's not on the other team, it's on you to win, and the expectations are high. Coming into the season, we probably had a lot of pressure on us, but with Olson and Becker not available to start the year, and then Emmett went down, I think, game 3 or 4, missed a few games. Charlie Moore's been out the last month. Jacoby missed 2 games, down at that Christmas tournament in Milwaukee where he played really good teams. Queckwell's missed the last few games. So, it's the kind of thing where I don't think we're going to get rattled by much, If we got 5 guys in blue jerseys or white jerseys, we're gonna try to compete. And if everybody's available, like Jason said, I think we're a formidable opponent and not somebody that you can take lightly, especially early in the playoffs. So, but at the same time, we have a ton of respect for the coaches and the teams in the bracket. I think, Alman Bancroft, if we could get to round 2, the 2 kids they got, the kid in the middle, Phillips, and Coach Lamb's son, are incredible players. So hopefully our schedule has us battle tested, because as soon as Friday night, you're playing somebody that can make a state run.
One more question for you, Coach. You have been around for quite a while. You've had these seeding meetings or the brackets come out. How do you think the bracket compares skill-wise and competitiveness this year compared to past years?
It's probably the deepest it's been in my 18 years. Like I said, Newman is probably the favorite to win the state championship, and right behind him you got Pacelli, who we beat early in the season, but they're a completely different team on film now. Athens, the 3 seed, is very good. And then you have us and Almond, who I think are right there trying to, win that Friday night game and pull an upset after that. And, even Port Edwards, Assumption's in a very tough conference. So I think, really the top 7, 8, 9 teams are teams that can win 2 or 3 playoff games. And it makes it fun, but at the same time, you kind of wish some of those teams were spread out a little more. But
right.
It is what it is. We got to play who's in the bracket, and we're going to do what we can to try to survive another day.
Coach, back to Jason here as we wrap things up, talking to Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi. Coach, you're on the hammer today. You're the last one, and we're gonna close the whole thing down after you. We mentioned your adversity during the season and how you battled through it. There were some times during the season in the standings you were maybe 4th or 5th place. So you've climbed all the way up to 2nd place. You're in your league's crossover event on Saturday. Well, you'll take on another tough team in the Fall Creek Crickets. Are you able to use that game for playoff preparation, or what kind of value do you put on that game, knowing that all we've got between Saturday and Tuesday is is the actual playoff game, but we still want to treat this game in a certain way. How do you value that Saturday game?
Well, I think you value it as kind of a learning experience, and it can present some challenges that maybe you see that following week. Fall Creek has some really talented kids in the middle. The Volrath kid is just incredible. But now, so is the kid from Almond Bancroft, Phillips. So maybe you can kind of get tested and get some practice against a very formidable kid inside. And, they have some kids that go around them, just like Coach Lamb's son. Or I think you use it as preparation and practice. It's kind of a pressure-free game, a great environment with all the Clover Belt schools there, and a really large facility with a big crowd. So I think the experience could help you that following week.
Columbus Catholic head coach Joe Kinechi. Coach, good luck. I know we'll talk again soon. Hey,
thanks, guys. Thanks for the coverage.
All right, Dan, there we go. 9 coaches on the show today. We thank each and every one of them. What a I can't even put it to words sometimes. Just the their want to and desire to join us and come on here and help advertise their teams. We thank them for that. What did you learn anything today? I'm
really surprised with just how calm coaches are, because
today.
Yeah, because we've been through this, right? And you have the bracket, and all of a sudden your heart beats a little bit harder, a little bit faster, and we need to get film with these guys. How good are these teams? We haven't seen these guys play yet. Because you can't go scout all 15 other teams in the bracket, right? Right. You need to spend time on your own team, and hopefully you have good assistant coaches that'll help you pick out the top 5, 6 teams, and you have something on them, right? And if you have a really good assistant coach staff, you can actually assign teams for that Saturday game. You can assign the 2 favorites for that Friday night game for the Saturday one, so that whoever wins, you already have a scouting report ready, and then the walkthrough is really easy.
I think for some of the coaches, the emotions might go like this. They got their seed today. They were happy or unhappy, but right away they have a plan to beat who they're going to beat or who they're going to play. Sometime during the week, they start doubting it. And then sometime around the corner, then they start believing it again.
Well, yeah, because you don't play the game for them, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they're all 16 to 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Right? And who knows what happens. Boys, I feel a little bit more confident. You kind of get what you get. But the girls, that can be tougher. Sometimes they come in really prepared. Sometimes they come in like it's their first game. It's crazy.
You're telling me teenagers are unpredictable.
That's what I'm saying.
That's crazy talk.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to wrap it up where I started. I'll give Dan last words after this. But again, what's important to know here, and we heard from a lot of these we heard from all 9 of the coaches, and there's others out there that didn't call in, or they were just there to listen, that were probably nodding their heads along the way to some of these. But the seed process at this point is going to be this going forward. There may be some mathematical adjustments, but this will be the process going forward. So again, as a reminder, the mathematical seed process takes into account your entire season's worth of work. It doesn't have the ability, and it doesn't want to, and the people that are in charge of it don't want it to pull out just one or two single games and evaluate those separate and then somehow put that math back into the formula. So just get that out of your mind. That's not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere else, and it won't happen in this environment. But what this environment calls for, though, is for your entire group, so whether it's 12, 13, 16, whatever it is, teams that are in your group, what it calls for is to get it down to the common denominator, which in this case is strength of schedule. And then at that point, teams are evaluated on the exact same level and then assigned their seeds based from that common denominator level.
Yeah.
That's the process.
There are some discussions about asking about other D5 games. Talking to Jason, I think there might be game write-ups possibly leading into those first round games. We can try to have game previews. It's really hard to hit every game, right? Because we have 16 papers or something here.
Yeah, there's almost 500 boys basketball teams across the state. So if you've got a write-up, send it in. We'll be happy to have you be a guest publisher. Sure.
Yeah. And some of the teams that I know, and I probably follow the Division 5 sectional the most because it's local to the area and you get to know the coaches really well. There are some of these teams that are reeling a little bit, and there's been some injuries on some of these teams where their seed is probably higher than where they probably should be. Again, it's based on your resume.
Yeah.
But you have kids that are out for the year, and all of a sudden your best or your second best player is out, and like, what do you do? Like, you still play it. So.
Yeah, and what people at home will learn or observe about that is when they see a team lose, and then they'll go look and say, oh, yeah, the second leading scorer has been out since last week with a whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess that makes sense then.
Yeah. So definitely be on the lookout for that. For as unpredictable as March Madness is for these tournaments, it's really hard to go into a school and win a playoff game.
A road team.
Mm-hmm. Unless it is where we have one really good conference and they took 8th in that conference and they're playing against weaker conferences, you can maybe win a couple games that way, but it's really hard to win on the road. It's really, really hard to win a playoff game on the road. It's no different here.
That home energy, or in this case, away from your own home energy, it really gets on your nerves.
It does.
It makes you play uncommon to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as people are observing at home with that. All right, Dan. Well, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Trevor Zaleski on the help, Mike Wendlandt making sure that all the coaches called in and answered their phones and all that kind of stuff. Weekly schedule is on ZaleskiSports.com. Just click weekly schedule. Girls basketball games this week, playoff games. Boys basketball playoffs all begin next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night, everybody.